Greetings and salutations. You're listening to Morning by the Coast, a weekly podcast brought to you every Monday morning, only on YouTube, and I'll get into why in just a moment. You could feel free to head over to my website, which is morningbythecoastblog.wordpress.com. Once again, that's morningbythecoastblog.wordpress.com. Feel free to email me any questions, comments, or any other general feedback, and my email is mbtcpodcast.info@gmail.com. Once again, that's mbtcpodcast.info@gmail.com. I'll have links to both of those down in the description down below. And with that being said, let's get on with the show. So, welcome to my review of Star Wars The Last Jedi, but we're going to hold off on that for a couple minutes. Also, if you are listening to this, I would like to mention that it will contain spoilers, obviously. The movie's been out for just about a month now, so I feel like spoilers are fair game. And if you can't tell already, I am very sick. Probably Wednesday, I started getting sick. My throat, it hurt a lot, and now it's kind of just devolved into just my nose is stuffy, my throat still hurts, and I'm just coughing my lungs off. As you heard in the intro, Morning by the Coast is exclusively on YouTube for now. Something happened with with SoundCloud, because I guess apparently you have to pay a monthly subscription in order to access unlimited uploads, and since I'm uploading on a podcast format, which is a much higher length of audio, I can only upload, I believe it's 5 hours of audio. So for now, we are just sticking to YouTube. I do intend on uploading to another platform, whether that's Spotify, Podbeam, whatever it is. Do expect that I will be uploading not only just on YouTube, but also on another platform, because I know some people who might want to listen to it, if they're listening to it on YouTube, it uses a lot more data. Also, it's just easier to listen on Spotify or another platform where you can play it in the background and, navigate other apps. But that is something that will be that I will be looking into within the next probably 2 weeks. So within the next 2 weeks, expect that I will upload all of Morning by the Coast catalog and that week's episode on whether it's Spotify, Podbeam, whatever it is. I will obviously make sure to notify everybody. If you follow the website, which is the best way to stay updated on all the latest and greatest news in regards to Morning by the Coast. And like I said, I am sick, so I'm coughing a lot, and there might be a fair share of cuts in the audio. Anyways, with that being said, let's get into my Star Wars The Last Jedi spoilerific review. So, I do consider myself a pretty big Star Wars fan as I look at my two Star Wars posters right in front of my monitor. I have a Last Jedi poster along with just a what is the term? Panoramic of all the characters. But I have seen The Last Jedi twice as of recording this episode. I do intend on seeing it a third and possibly fourth time. I don't really think a fourth time is really that necessary, but there is a possibility that I will see it a fourth time, but definitely a third time. And so I'm going to go through each, watching of the movie and kind of my reaction each time. Now, the first time I watched the movie, I was a bit upset with it. I was kind of disappointed. I felt like the entire movie was kind of just not really what I was hoping it to be. But I was I enjoyed the movie. I just, I thought there was a lot of unnecessary kind of clutter within the movie. And even with the movie being 2.5 hours, it felt like they tried to cram in so much into the movie, with the side plots, whether it was with Rose and Finn, and the whole Canto Bight scene, which honestly I enjoyed. I enjoyed that scene. I know I'm in the minority when I say this, but I genuinely enjoyed that scene. But I felt like if they took it out of the movie, we could maybe add more to the Luke and Rey plotline, or even with the whole Resistance kind of avoiding the First Order. And so the first time I watched the movie, I did enjoy most of it. But I feel like one of the biggest issues that I had has to do with the pacing of the movie. And even now, after my second watching, it's still an issue that I have with the movie. And I listened to an interview with Rian Johnson, and even he was saying Initially, the movie was going to be 3.5 hours long. I think it was after the first edit, he claimed that they had 3.5 hours of movie, and that's a long movie. And even 2.5 is a long movie too. But I felt like 3.5. I mean, I am glad that they ended up going with the 2.5, but with 3.5, that really raises a lot of questions, like, were there other stories? Because you're adding another hour to this movie on top of an already long movie. So with 3.5 hours, are we adding more side stories? Are we adding more cinematic shots? Are we, creating new characters along with strengthening current characters? It raises a lot of questions of what exactly did this 3.5 cut have that wasn't included in the theatrical release. And I know in the interview that someone asked, or the interviewer asked him, they said, is there plans to release a director's cut? And he said he felt that what they cut out of the original edit was kind of useless, which is, again, interesting, because it's like, well, what exactly was an hour worth of useless footage? Because you don't just film an hour of footage and just not use it, especially with a title that is as large as Star Wars is. Anyways, so I think what I'm going to do is go through each watch through that I had of the movie and my issues that I had, and things that I liked, and then I'll talk about my second watch of the movie and kind of things that I noticed, or maybe things I noticed in the second watching that I didn't notice in the first one, or things in the second one, or things that happened in the first one that maybe I felt was kind of annoying or a nuisance that in the second time I kind of understood a lot better and had a lot better understanding of. And I feel like with The Last Jedi, it does require multiple watches, at least two. So, with my first viewing, I'll start off with the opening of the movie. We have the Resistance kind of in space, along with the First Order, and they're kind of following them behind. And this starts in the middle of a battle. So I believe the Dreadnought is planning to blow up a massive Resistance base, and obviously, clearly, that's not a good thing. So we have Poe Dameron, who's kind of the, I guess, Han Solo of the current trilogy. He's kind of that, wacky, goes against the grain, just does whatever he believes is best for not only himself but other people. Even if it involves the death of most of the Resistance, he will go to no end to make sure that him and other people are safe, even if a couple people have to die. So we see Poe near the Dreadnought, and he's trying to blow up, I guess, the main lasers that are targeting the Resistance base, and we have General Leia, who's telling him, like, stop, like, this is a dumb idea, it's a suicide mission, you're gonna get us all killed. And he turns off his radio, and he just goes for it. And a good amount of people end up dying because of this. And I kind of felt a bit... I mean, I was a little kind of, I guess, upset is the best word I can use to describe it. But at the same time, I was like, okay, whatever. It happened. And so, so Poe damages the Dreadnought. And in the meantime, it goes between Poe and Rose's sister. And she's on one of the Resistance bombers. And her job is to drop the bombs, but she has okay, I just realized this now. Why would, in order to drop the bombs in the ship, she has to use an external device? Like, wouldn't it make more sense to have it on the main control panel rather than a controller? I don't know. But, so she drops the controller, it falls all the way down. Oh wait, no, it's up there, but she gets knocked down all the way to the bottom. And we see her looking, so she's on her back, she's looking up, she sees the controller literally on the edge, and she's kicking the ladder, kicking it, and it's not falling. And finally, of course, she kicks it, it falls, and I think miraculously she catches it. Or maybe she doesn't catch it, but the bombs end up dropping. And I had this problem initially when I watched the movie the first time, and I know a lot of people had this issue too, but if we're in space, why are these bombs just falling through free space? But eventually I kind of just, after my second watch through, I thought, whatever, it's Star Wars. Nothing about this movie is realistic in any way whatsoever. I don't think bombs falling is the biggest, I guess, scientific inaccurate part of this movie. I'd argue most of this movie is inaccurate, or even, for that matter, the entire saga is completely unrealistic. It's science fiction. That's the entire purpose of it. It's science fiction. It's fake science. Anyways, so then we see Poe enter kind of the main resistance ship. Princess Leia is very much angry at him. Now, with the good majority of their fighters dead, Leia demotes him. I don't know what his previous position is or what position he went to afterwards, but he got demoted. Now, I think I'm getting up the pacing of the movie mixed up here. And keep in mind, I'm only focusing on the Resistance story arc as of now. I'll hop to the Rey and Luke one in just a minute. But somehow in between all of this, so he gets demoted and he promotes Holdo to the position above him. And one thing that kind of irked me a little bit was he is shocked. He has never, for some reason that I don't know, has never seen Holdo before. Not once. In a fleet of no more than 1,000 people, he has somehow never managed to pick out the only other human being on the Resistance, besides Leia and himself, and I guess Finn, and Rose. Okay, maybe that's 5. But he somehow does not manage to notice the girl with pink hair. What? That does not make sense. Anyways, so, Poe is obviously very annoyed. And, again, I don't know when this happens, but spoiler alert, I mean, I guess this entire review is spoiled. But the ship blows up, and Leia is floating through space. Now, I have a bone to pick with this scene. So when we see Leia floating through space, I remember watching it for the first time. In all due respect, Carrie Fisher, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but I laughed at this scene. And I feel horrible admitting to this, but it felt comedic. I felt like I was watching a superhero movie when this was happening. Now keep in mind that this is during my first watch of the movie. In my opinion of the second watch through is much different from the first one. But and when she floated back into the ship, I remember like I held my hands out with like my palms to the air, like, or palms up. Like, what? Like, what the heck? What is, like, this can't happen. This isn't like, I don't know. I was just very much, I guess, disappointed with the scene. This specific one scene. But, I didn't realize this the first time, and it wasn't until I actually watched a video on YouTube explaining this, but somehow she managed to use the Force to spacewalk. I think that's the term. And something that I don't know how much people know, but this is not new, the whole spacewalk. I believe it's in the Clone Wars where we see Plo Koon spacewalk. I don't know much about it. I just remember reading a Reddit post kind of talking about the whole Leia spacewalk scene. A lot of people were upset with it, or some people were kind of conflicted, such as myself. And then there were some people pointing out that this or some people were kind of upset with the lack of realness of the scene. But again, this has happened before in canon with Plo Koon in the Clone Wars. So now to the Rey and Luke story arc. Now, admittedly, I missed the first probably 2 minutes of their story arc. I went to the bathroom and I missed it. Supposedly, Rey hands Luke, or obviously we see this in The Force Awakens, but Rey holds out the lightsaber, and then Luke takes it and then throws it over her shoulder. Now, so I saw this obviously the second time, but after I heard this, I didn't really believe it at first. I thought people were just joking around, like, oh yeah, he threw it over his shoulder. And, I honestly don't really have any opinion on this. I know some people, and I totally understand where they're coming from, kind of all this build up for 2 years just to see Luke throw it over his shoulder. Like, come on. This is something I can't agree on. And again, it's a super small thing. I hate to nitpick it, but it's Star Wars. A movie this big kind of, I don't want to say deserves to be nitpicked, but when you're something that is as large and powerful as Star Wars, you're going to have people who are going to point out just the smallest stupid nuances. That's just the way things are. So we see Luke go into his hut. Rey's asking, I want you to train me. He's refusing to train her, and eventually he caves in and says, okay, fine, I'll train you. We'll have 3 main lessons. Meet me here tomorrow, crack of dawn. If you're not here, then we're not training. And of course, Rey, who's very passionate and really, this is something that she's wanting to do. We hear her say in the trailer of The Last Jedi, I want to know where I belong in all of this. And we kind of see, I guess, her interest really peak, similar to Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, where he goes to Dagobah and he sees Yoda and he's like, listen, dude, I want you to train me. And even Yoda, who has the same reaction as Luke, Yoda tells Luke, you know what, I'm not training you, and eventually he ends up training him. But something I feel like we get a lot of with Luke and Rey's story arc is humor. And the humor is honestly not that bad. That was one thing, I guess these are 2 things, but I feel like you can group them together. Something that I was concerned with the movie about going into it was the fan service along with the humor. Now, after my first watching of the movie, I felt like there was... And after my first watching, keep in mind, I was extremely nitpicky, and I kind of was an anti fan. Kind of on purpose. I enjoyed the movie, but I was just... The few very small things that I didn't like about the movie really itched me the wrong way. And kind of really bugged me. But... the humor and the fan service, specifically within the Rey and Luke storyline, was a bit too much. I will say, with specifically and really exclusively only their story arc, I felt like that is the one story arc that they should have taken seriously. But the humor was well executed. I laughed at probably most of the jokes, and I really enjoyed kind of within the first couple minutes where we see the joke or the humor between Hux and Poe. And I was laughing. I thought that was hilarious. But at the same time, I was like, really? We're 5 minutes into this movie and we're already cracking jokes? But, again, I went into the movie kind of wanting to nitpick it for not only the good things, but the bad things, too. But eventually I was able to kind of overcome that, or the humor that at the time I thought was funny, but at the same time thought was stupid. Like, after seeing it the first time and going to see it again for the second time, I didn't have that mindset of, like, oh, more jokes, or more fan, like with the Yoda scene. I remember with the Yoda scene, when Rey leaves the planet, and Luke went to go to the tree where the sacred Jedi texts are, and we see Ghost Yoda just come out of nowhere, and at the time, when I saw the first viewing, I thought, really? Is this really necessary? And after watching it the second time, I was able to kind of kick those nitpicky, I guess, thoughts and opinions to the side. And after seeing it the second time, I thoroughly enjoyed not only the humor and the I guess, well, fan service is supposed to be a negative term, but I felt like what little fan service there was in the movie was not to the point where it was just ridiculous, such as in The Force Awakens, which I feel like is cluttered with fan service. But with The Last Jedi, they did a good job at balancing in knowing when to, I guess, draw the line. And I know with Rian Johnson, who's claimed that he is a massive fan of Star Wars, and a lot of people are saying that The Last Jedi is kind of like our movie, or kind of like if the fans were to direct a Star Wars movie or write a Star Wars movie, it would be what Rian Johnson did. But as I record this, I start to realize, I'm looking at the timer on Audacity, and I realize I'm 20 minutes in. So rather than going through the movie chronologically, I'm just going to go through my issues and what I enjoyed about the movie. So I already talked about Leia Dern, or Aldo, and kind of how I didn't really enjoy that. I talked about Leia in the scene where she's floating through space. One scene that I didn't really like okay, so aesthetically I enjoyed this scene, but from, I guess, a science, and again, it's Star Wars, it's not supposed to make sense. The scene when Aldo flies through the Dreadnought using light speed. After watching it, I was talking about it and just thinking about the movie, kind of really digesting it for the first time. That was something that kind of rubs me the wrong way, not in the way that other things did where I was purposely looking for flaws in the movie, but this was something that I genuinely noticed afterwards that I wasn't really, I guess, too keen on. But again, the scene is amazing, and it's something I really enjoy about the movie in general. Like, the effects, whether it's special effects or just normal effects, I felt like the balance between the two was really good, because I feel like with a lot of movies, and especially with Marvel movies, most of it is green screen. Like, most of it is not really there. But with The Last Jedi, I felt like a good majority of the movie was actually there. Like, it was actually real. Unlike with The Force Awakens, which is a lot of SFX. And even with the scenes in The Last Jedi where there was special effects, it didn't feel like incredibly ridiculous. And of course, with something like Star Wars, where they pretty much have unlimited resources, it's very easy to kind of, have that realistic aspect there, whether it's actually there on screen or if it was edited into the final movie. I felt like that was something they did well, was the effects of the movie, whether it's the explosions, the set design, just all of that. I felt like they did do a good job on. But we're not talking about the good stuff right now, we're talking about the bad stuff. So now, another thing that I had against the movie, and I still kind of have, but also at the same time, I again feel like this is something I was just being nitpicky with on purpose, but the movie contradicts itself every time something major is about to happen. Or I don't know if contradicts is the word I was meaning to use, but right when something is about to happen, something completely opposite of said thing happens. And I believe there's literally a scene there's dialogue between Rey and Luke, where we see Rey say, "I'm gonna do this," and then Luke goes, "No, you're not," and then Rey goes, "Yes, I am," and Luke says, "No, you're not," and then Rey goes, "Okay, then I'm not gonna do it." And I don't know exactly where in the movie this is or what the conversation is, but it's pretty much, when you boil it down to the purpose of it, that's what I guess their conversation consisted of. And this kind of leads into the next thing. The dialogue was really good, but I felt like there's a lot of just completely useless and utter garbage for dialogue. There's a lot of just... And I know when you have a movie that's 2.5 hours long, it's kind of hard to really have unique dialogue throughout the entire movie. And I give a lot of props to the script writers for making the script mainly bearable, but also at the same time, I would say 80% of the script is pretty good, or the dialogue was really good, but then the other 20% is just garbage, and I felt like they could just get rid of it altogether. So this is something I touch on, I believe, in the intro, but I felt even with the movie being 2.5 hours long, there was still a lot of useless kind of gunk in there. And I know a lot of people have a bone to pick with the casino scene that we have between Rose and Finn when they go to Canto Bight, which I enjoyed, and I feel like a lot of people are saying like it's not Star Wars. It feels very Disney-y, if that's a real word. Like it feels really kind of pointless. There are a lot of people who debate the political aspect of it. You know, you have like the high class and then the low class, and then you see like with the animals, I don't know what the heck they're called. We see them kind of captured, and then eventually they free them. But that's not something I'm here to discuss. But I felt like I enjoyed the casino scene, but I completely understand and agree with people who claim it is useless. While I do enjoy the scene, I felt like it was not necessary to the storyline. I mean, I guess it kind of builds the relationship with Rose and Finn, but we don't really see their relationship addressed at any other point throughout the movie. We kind of just, or besides at the ending, but I felt like its attempt is to make us want to relate to Finn and Rose. Like, it wants us to enjoy their relationship, but it doesn't really do it in a way that's practical or in a way that I personally can agree with. So another thing is the pacing of the movie was very obscure. It felt very weird. And this is not something that I've really had an issue with for the most part, but I thought it was weird how they kind of had transitions both from an editing standpoint and a story standpoint. I felt like they tried too hard to force the story arc with Poe, Holdo, and the Resistance, and then with Rey and Luke, and then with Finn and Rose. It just felt weird, kind of how they had it formatted. But after seeing it the second time, I was kind of able to bear it, but at the same time, it was like, really, I feel like we could maybe do a better job at cutting the movie, again, from an editing standpoint. And, you know, freaking, who cares what I say? Clearly, I'm not a professional, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. You know, it's easy to critique it, but when you're actually in a position where you're producing a movie that is Star Wars, probably the most well-known movie of all time, you know, when you're in that position, I'm sure it can be much more difficult to actually produce, I guess, something that is perfect. Because you're always going to have things that people are not going to like about the movie. It's going to happen with anything, whether it's a movie, a TV show, a video game, whatever it is. You're always going to have critics who are going to tear it apart and just destroy it for being what it is. Just, whether it's justified or not justified, you're going to have hate regardless. The next thing, and I think there's an actual meaning behind this, or an explanation I meant to say, but we have Luke, who, when he's talking to Rey in The Last Jedi, he claims that he came there to die, that he just wanted to, you know, after what happened with Ben Solo or Kylo Ren, in the Jedi Temple, he thought, you know what, there's no hope, I'm gonna go to an isolation, I'm going to go to Octu, and I'm just going to come here, live the rest of my life out, and eventually die. But the entire premise of The Force Awakens is them trying to track Luke, and Luke made a complex map to find where he was. Yet, he claims that he came to Octu to die. What? Where's the logic in that? But, like I said, I think there might be an actual purpose behind this. I'm not too sure of it, but I believe I saw a video kind of addressing this issue and explaining why the writing was done in that way, to kind of have Luke come here, yet at the same time making a map to die. Like, was his plan to have people come there and realize he's dead and then mourn him? Like, what exactly was the purpose of this map? Now, kind of the last thing I want to talk about before I go into what I enjoyed about the movie. One thing that I wish they went into more detail on was with Han Solo's death. Because obviously, in The Force Awakens, he's murdered by Kylo, aka his son. But we have Luke ask Rey, like, where's Han Solo? Because they pull up in the Millennium Falcon, him, Chewbacca, and I don't know if anybody else is there. Where is C-3PO throughout this movie? I just realized that. I know we see him kind of in the end, when they're on Crate, but I don't remember seeing him at any other point. up until the ending of the movie. I don't know where R2-D2 is. I think R2-D2 is kind of with the Resistance, because I know we see him with BB-8 at some points. But we see Luke ask Rey, like, where's Han Solo? And that's the extent of his knowledge. And I feel like it's kind of something that is a bit annoying. And I know this is a kind of a plot hole that is, I guess, happens all throughout Star Wars movie, such as in The New Hope, where Vader's looking for Leia, who's his daughter, and we know that Leia is Force sensitive. So wouldn't Vader be able to kind of know where she is because, like, he can sense her Force ability? So, even with Luke, like, Jedis have the ability to kind of receive messages or, like, know when something bad happened, even from across the universe. But with Luke, he just doesn't know that Han Solo is dead. And this is kind of something that I feel like would be really interesting if they were to maybe write more of this into the script. If maybe, I don't know, Luke finds out that Han is dead, and maybe he tries to find Han, or maybe he doesn't know that Han is dead, and he's trying to find him, just to find out that he's dead. I feel like it would be really interesting and very dark if we had kind of Luke come to realize that his best friend is dead. Now, I know that sounds a bit sadistic, like, oh, I want to see Luke find out that Han Solo's dead, but it'd be really interesting to kind of, because throughout the movie, he's very neutral. He's not really a beat. I mean, I guess you could maybe say he's feeling very mopey and sappy, but I feel like him finding out that his best friend is dead would really throw him into a very deep, dark place, or really maybe even push him to the dark side. Think about imagine if him finding out Han Solo triggered him going to the dark side, and that was the entire premise of Episode 9, was Luke on the dark side, and Rey and Kylo kind of fighting him. Assuming that Snoke doesn't die in this movie, maybe Snoke and Luke team up and fight, or not fight, but their entire goal is to destroy Luke and Rey, or not Luke and Rey, Kylo and Rey, because, I don't know, maybe they want to build a new Jedi temple, or they want to, bring the Jedi back. Or maybe they want to rule the galaxy. Maybe we have two bad guys kind of feuding against each other. That'd be really interesting. That's something that we've not yet seen in Star Wars movies, is two bad guys kind of feuding against each other. That'd be really cool if they were to go with the storyline. And again, this is just my own personal opinion. This is kind of just me being the Star Wars fanboy that I am, kind of making my own theory. And that's what makes Star Wars so awesome, is it gives people the ability to kind of, create their own, I guess, hypothetical story. And even with, like, the comics or the books, we're talking about Legends now, but, like, we have all these, like, alternative storylines, such as, I don't know what the name of it is, but we have, I think it's an alternative to The New Hope, and this kind of follows the story arc of, what if Leia was also a Jedi and Luke turns to the dark side, so we have Luke against Leia. That'd be really cool to see. And, with the resources that Star Wars has, and as big as it is, I feel like these possibilities are something that can really be addressed, whether it's a fan film or an actual film produced by Lucasfilms or Disney. It's really cool kind of seeing these concepts that fans have, or these ideas that fans have, or even writers have, or the people who actually produce the movie. It's just awesome seeing other people's opinions or I guess alternative realities to Star Wars. It's really awesome. But onto what I enjoyed about the movie. So the things I did enjoy about this movie definitely outweighs what I disliked about the movie. While the list is shorter than what I liked about the movie, it is the few things that I have on this list are very powerful, and I feel like really carry the movie to a much higher rating than if they weren't as powerful. So the first thing I enjoyed about the movie was the set design. The set design was just superb. It was very, I would even go as far to claim it's very minimalistic. It doesn't try to cram a whole bunch of things into the scene, like with the prequels, which it just tried so hard to just cram all these background characters, or not necessarily background characters if they have a meaning, but cram all these characters on screen and all these spaceships and pretty lights. With The Last Jedi, it's very straight to the point. It's very, I guess, monotone. It's very bland. but at the same time, it's done well. And with Snoke's throat room, with Snoke's throne room, they did I would argue, or I would say that Snoke's throne room, that entire scene, is probably my favorite scene from any movie of all time. It was that good, and the set design was so well executed. Like, I felt like I was watching a White Stripes music video with the red background and the blacks, and we have like the gold on Snoke's robes, which kind of contrasts with the Praetorian guards who are wearing all red, and his black and gray throne and his red backdrop. It just, the set design was so well done, and I have so much props, and even the costume design, the set design and the costume design. Like, aesthetically, this movie was amazing. I would say it's probably, The Last Jedi has the best set design of any Star Wars movie of all time. I would even say it's better than Return of the Jedi, because I feel like Return of the Jedi set design and costume design is amazing. But I would say The Last Jedi is even better than that. So on the topic of Snoke's throne room, there we go, said it right that time. The fight between, and this, I can say this with any fight scene in this movie, but the scene between Rey, Snoke, and Kylo and the Praetorian guards, the whole fight segment is just so well executed, no pun intended, but it's so incredible, like, where we see, because the scene, or not the scene, the part where we see Snoke, and I guess pretty much telling Kylo to do it. It's when I was watching that, I was at the edge of my seat. I was thinking, like, Rey could die right now. Like, somebody's dying, whether it's Snoke, Kylo, or Rey. One of the three major characters that are in this one scene are gonna, at least one is gonna die. And we see Kylo end up killing his master, Supreme Leader Snoke. And I thought, a lot of people don't like this. A lot of people are very upset with the killing of Snoke. But I can agree with the decision to do so. And here's why. So, Snoke is obviously a very much underdeveloped character. They kind of cut him out of the, again, no pun intended. They kind of cut him from this trilogy, from the current current trilogy. Again, no pun intended, or kind of intended. At first it wasn't, but now I'm gonna intend the pun. But I feel like with the Sith, we see the greed. You know, that's what kind of makes the Sith who they are, because, you know, a big part of what they believe in or what they want is, I guess, power. And I would go as far to even say divine power, just ultimate power over every other being in the galaxy. And it's kind of written in stone that the Sith apprentice is supposed to kill their master. You know, Vader, or let's go back. So with Darth Plagueis, you know, we have this guy who's trying to perfect Sith alchemy. He's trying to, you know, figure out how to put himself into another being. And there are theories that Darth Plagueis is Anakin, but we see Darth Sidious, or Emperor Palpatine, kill Plagueis in his sleep. And you know, this is something Plagueis knew. Plagueis knew that eventually he was going to be bested by Emperor Palpatine, or Darth Sidious. And then we see Anakin kill Dooku. And this is kind of not exactly apprentice killing master, but we see a Sith killing a Sith. You know, we wouldn't have this with Jedi. Jedi are not going to kill other Jedi, but Sith, however, will kill other Sith if it means that they get power over the other, I guess, Empire, or in this case, First Order. And then we see Vader double-cross Sidious and kill his master. And hence the name Return Return of the Jedi, I honestly, in the however many years I've been a fan of Star Wars, I still don't know which one it is properly, and I know somebody is going to correct me on that. But we see Vader double-cross Sidious, and now we see Kylo double-cross Snoke, and I feel like this is a really interesting, like, I feel like, so it's a major thing, but at the same time it's a very minor thing. Like, to most people, they just see, or I guess casual fans of Star Wars, I'll say that, casual fans who kind of watch The Last Jedi and they think, wow, like, this is crazy, while someone who maybe has more knowledge, and maybe this is me just gatekeeping Star Wars, I know that's what it sounds like I'm doing right now, but to someone who knows a lot about, I guess, the lore and really the deep, gritty, nitty knowledge, I think I just made up a word, gritty, nitty, someone who knows a lot about Star Wars understands kind of the decision to have Kylo, I wouldn't even say best as master, because there wasn't even really any competition at that current moment, but we see Kylo double cross Snoke and just kill him with no I guess second thought, and I know there's kind of build up in The Force Awakens and even up until this point in The Last Jedi where we have Kylo who kind of disagree, like, I feel like with Snoke he's kind of like an abuser to Kylo, like, mentally he is, we see him, or a manipulator, that's probably a much more appropriate word to use, but we see Snoke manipulate Kylo, and Kylo, both hates Snoke and loves Snoke. We see in the beginning when when Kylo smashes his helmet, and I enjoyed this. I know some people really enjoyed his helmet, but I thought his helmet was stupid. Not only did it sound stupid, but it looked stupid. But plus, I don't want, like, I feel like when he has the helmet, when Kylo has the helmet, he resembles, or not Anakin, he resembles Vader too much, and it kind of makes it a bit weird watching the movie. But we see Snoke say, like, take that stupid mask off, it's stupid, like, be unique, or something like this. He's like, be unique, ditch the helmet, just don't wear it, it's dumb. Stop trying to, I guess, be like your grandfather, be yourself, kind of. Which I guess is a good tool for younger kids, like, don't try and be like other people, instead be like yourself. But I did enjoy the scene in the throne room. So next we have the fight scene between Finn and Phasma. Now this is something that I was most excited for going into the movie. I remember watching the reveal trailer and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I want to see this. I want to see Finn and Phasma fight. Like, screw Luke and Kylo, screw Kylo and Rey. I want to see Finn and Phasma. Now the actual fight scene was I would maybe say just as awesome as I was anticipating it to be, but I felt like Phasma was a very disappointing character, and I understand she's kind of meant to resemble Boba Fett, because, we see Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi, when he gets sucked into the Sarlacc pit, and it's so funny seeing the theories that he is somehow still alive, and I've read into it before too, and I do believe, or I'm willing to agree that it is believable, but I feel like it's people kind of, I guess, enjoying Boba Fett so much that they're willing to clamor to the idea that he is still alive. And I feel like even with Phasma, and that was a very horrible voice crack, but reminder, I am sick, I am sorry, but with Phasma, we're seeing people kind of clamor like, no, what if Phasma's still alive? Like, Phasma has this awesome armor that deflects blaster bullets, and it's fireproof, or I don't know if it's completely fireproof, but it's cool to think that Phasma could still, it would be really cool to see Phasma still be alive. I do want to see more Phasma in episode 9, but only if she is utilized properly. And I wouldn't want her to be part of another story arc. I would maybe want her to see, or I maybe want to see her pop up in the last third of the movie, and she kind of does something crazy. But I enjoyed the fight scene. I thought it was awesome. And even when we saw BB-8 kind of controlling the AT-ST and saving Finn, I thought that was also something that was really cool. But something I would also like to talk about is Benicio del Toro's character. I don't even know what his character's name is, but his character was really interesting, and similar to Phasma, I felt was utterly underdeveloped. Now, I feel like the character was extremely interesting, but the depth was just not there. There's no character depth. There wasn't really much of him even on screen, for that matter. But I felt like his character was like, we see him kind of a bit skeptical. I got it right the first time. Skeptical to help Finn and Rose, but eventually he agrees, and we see, and this is okay. This is something unrelated, but something I didn't really enjoy. But we see the Resistance contact Maz Kanata from Force Awakens, and clearly she's a very important character, and she advises, oh, they're the Codebreaker, find him on whatever it's called, the gambling city. I know I said it before, I don't know why I can't remember it now, but we see her recommend the Codebreaker, or the Master Codebreaker. I don't exactly remember what she said his name was, but she advises, search for this guy, he'll help you. And I don't even think they found the proper Codebreaker guy. I think they just found a random guy who was like, yeah, I can kind of break codes. But then we see him double-crossing them in the end. That was awesome, and I felt like it was just incredible. We kind of see him lure them into, I guess, the fight scene with Finn and Phasma. And even we see Rose and Finn kind of... And this is another moment in the movie where they kind of try and push Rose and Finn just that much harder when they're like about to die and they're like, is this the end? And I felt like his character was completely and utterly underdeveloped, but at the same time I felt like it was really interesting kind of see him double cross them, because we haven't really, actually no, that's a lie, we've seen double crossing with oh my goodness, what is his name? Wow, this is embarrassing. This is really embarrassing. Lando Calrissian. Oh my goodness. Wow. I knew it in the back of my head. I was looking at my Star Wars poster and I saw him. But I guess we do see double crossing throughout the movie. And you could even say that with Jar Jar Binks kind of double crosses the Jedi and advises that they should elect Chancellor Palpatine to the leader, or whatever the heck the term is. But speaking of development of characters, Rose. Let's talk a little bit about Rose. Now, I know a good amount of people don't like Rose and feel like she's kind of useless, but I genuinely enjoy her, and I think she's an incredible character with a lot of potential, and I do believe that we're going to see her kind of utilized throughout the movie in Episode 9. I don't agree with what she did with Finn at the end, when Finn is kind of trying to sacrifice himself to save the Resistance, and we see Rose kind of knock his speeder or whatever the heck he's riding, and says something like, oh, we don't fight what we hate but protect what we love, and when that happened I was kind of like, what the heck, like really, you just jeopardize both your lives? I don't even know if I think Finn survived, but I don't know exactly if he survives. Kylo's character development was the best out of any other character throughout the movie. Adam Driver does an amazing, and even for that matter, most of the actors in Star Wars have done an incredible job. And I know within Star Wars, acting isn't necessarily the strongest suit. Even in the original trilogy, the acting is not there 100%. And definitely actually, I would say the prequels, the acting is better than the sequel or the original trilogy. Hold on, before you click dislike, this is why I believe so. I feel like, and I know, like with the original trilogy, these are kids who have never really had a whole lot of acting chops, besides maybe Harrison Ford and a couple other actors. I know with Harrison Ford, he had previously worked with George Lucas on a couple other projects, but I know that Star Wars wasn't even a thing at that time, and even after they started it and they introduced more familiar actors, and I know James Earl Jones is another notable face, or I guess voice. But with the prequels, we have Samuel L. Jackson, we have Liam Neeson, we have a whole group of actors and actresses who we've seen before and who are still acting today. And I feel like, and I know but the dialogue in the prequels is very poor. So I feel like if the dialogue was better, especially with Attack of the Clones, which is, oh my goodness, don't even get me started with the dialogue in the prequels. But I felt like there's a lot of potential with the prequels, and of course at that point Star Wars was already a well-known movie series franchise. So kind of looking for actors and actresses to play these roles is much easier. But I will say with the current trilogy, they took a lot of risks with casting, and I felt like that is something that Star Wars does well. They're able to pick out amazing actors and actresses who maybe have not had a whole lot of exposure with movies. I know with Adam Driver, he's done a couple other roles before, and I know he was in the one show, I think it's called Girls, or I don't know exactly what it's called, but he had already been acting in Hollywood. But with Star Wars, we really see him kind of blow up, and even with Daisy Ridley or the other actors and actresses whose names I cannot think of at the moment, John Boyega, and then we see other familiar faces like Laura Dern, who's playing not Phasma, Holdo, and of course we have Luke Skywalker, or not, we have Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, and Oscar Isaac, who plays Poe. But we see these actors and actresses who we're not really familiar with, but at the same time they kind of blend with other actors, such as Benicio del Toro, who's arguably not one of the best actors, but he's a very well-known actors in Hollywood. He's very charismatic. He kind of fits his roles that he gets, and he's been in a lot of awesome movies. I'm talking about Benicio del Toro. But back to Kylo Ren, or Adam Driver. Kind of his development with Kylo, or Kylo's development, is really well executed and done really well. I don't really have much else to say about Kylo's character besides A+. So with Rey, I feel like Rey is not exactly the main focus. And I know there's three story plots that are going on, so she's clearly not the main focus. We have at least three other characters who are focused. Well, I'm saying that because we have two other story plots, so there's at least three people. I don't have to explain this. Now, a big prediction I had going into this movie was Rey doesn't have any parents. She's not going to be related to anybody. She's just going to be a complete nobody. And a lot of people were clamoring to Rey is a Kenobi, Rey is a Skywalker, Rey is related to Palpatine. Just all these theories that Rey is related to somebody, excuse me. But I was of the mindset that Rey is not related to anybody. And I know this is well-known knowledge that with Disney, they're trying to isolate themselves as much as they can from the original prequels, or the prequels, I will say. We have the introduction of the midichlorians and kind of how you need to have midichlorians in order to be a Jedi. And I feel like that's something they're going to steer away from doing within Star Wars canon, I guess, from this point going out. And I know even now it's hard to really say that Rey isn't related to anybody. We could say that Kylo is just saying that to kind of anger Rey. He says like, "Oh, your parents were just drunks who sold you to to gamble, whatever." But I fully agree and believe that Rey is not related to anybody, and that it should stay this way. And I feel like it's cool because it kind of gives the opportunity, or kind of helps younger fans of Star Wars, that anybody can be a Jedi, that anybody can just pick up a lightsaber and wield the Force. But at the same time, I don't really like that. I feel like it's something that could, if not done properly, can really kind of mess things up. I feel like there should be a certain force there, no pun intended, but there's just a whole lot of puns happening throughout this episode. But I feel like there should be, I wouldn't consider them requirements, but there should be certain, I guess, characteristics in order to be a Jedi. I don't think you should just be able to be a Jedi because you believe you are. I feel like there should be some sort of thing there that differentiates a Force user from just a normal human or species, or not species, but being. The next thing I really enjoyed was the planet on Crate. I thought that scene was badass. With a fight scene with Luke and Kylo, that was awesome. And we kind of see Luke Force projecting himself to Crate. I almost cried during that part where it turns out that Luke was not there the whole time, and we see him kind of hovering over the rock, and then we see the binary sunset, which, by the way, somehow I did not notice that the first time with the whole binary sunset. I noticed it, but I thought it was a little dot, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of going off the rails here, and I'm kind of rambling and just jumbling my words. But I remember when it transitions to Octu, we see a little dot, and it looks like a spaceship, and then it zooms out, and we see Luke sitting on the rock, and I just assumed it was a spaceship, and I can't really remember the scene fully, but, well, the second time I watched it, I did notice it, because I at that point, I knew that was supposed to be the binary sunset. Also, it's kind of hard to miss, but they play the whole Force music, and it was just awesome, and kind of, we see the Resistance get on board of the Millennium Falcon, and we see Rey's lightsaber, or Anakin, or Luke, whoever's lightsaber it is. Obviously it was Anakin's first, then Luke's, and then I guess Rey's, Luke's, and then somebody else's, and then Maz Kanata's, and then Rey's. Very kind of hard to follow if you don't fully understand it, but we have everybody on the Millennium Falcon, and then General Leia goes, we don't have much, but we have everything we need to rebuild. And that was just awesome. And that kind of leads into the ending. We have everybody in the Millennium Falcon. Their hopes are kind of shattered, but at the same time, they're optimistic and they're willing to move on and kind of rebuild from what they have. And the final thing that I will say about this movie is it took a lot of risks, and it was extremely unpredictable. And that's something that I give a lot of props to The Last Jedi. It wasn't afraid to, really push the boundaries. We saw the death of Snoke, the death of Luke, the almost death of Leia. It took a lot of risks, and I really do admire the movie for doing so. But now that my review is over, I'm sure you're wondering, well, what's your rating? What would you rate it at 10? I would rate Star Wars The Last Jedi a 7.8 out of 10. And while that's kind of a mediocre review, I would put it in my top 3 Star Wars movies of all time. I would put it in my top 3. It's not above The Empire Strikes Back, but it's definitely above Revenge of the Sith. And I know I'm young. I grew up on the prequels. And I do very much enjoy Revenge of the Sith for the most part. Keyword most part. There are a few things that I genuinely hate about that movie, but I still really much enjoy Revenge of the Sith. But The Last Jedi, I would probably put at number 2 or number 3. Anyways, with that being said, you're listening to Morning by the Coast, a weekly podcast brought to you every Monday morning, courtesy of exclusively YouTube, and that is only temporarily, as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to, like it, share it with other people. If you are a new listener, you can feel free to email me or head over to my website or subscribe. Literally any support whatsoever is extremely appreciated, especially this early on in the life cycle. I've been doing this podcast for a couple months now, I think 2 months, and I look forward to filming every episode each and every week. And some weeks I'm unable to record, whether it's due to, such as now, being sick, although I pushed through it and I was able to make it through. Actually, this is now the longest Morning by the Coast episode, and it's pretty ironic because I'm sick and I was able to push through and record it anyways. But you can feel free to head over to my website, where you can find all the latest and greatest news in regards to Morning by the Coast, and sometimes I will just upload random stuff. Also, before I get into the website, I am planning on doing a behind the scenes kind of bi-weekly thing, or, well, I say bi-weekly because there's one video that I would like to do, and that's the behind the scenes, kind of a week, or not a week, but kind of following the creative process, kind of starting from the time I upload that week's episode to then the recording and then uploading, and kind of just following the progress of planning each episode, because it starts every Monday, or, well, I guess usually I record on Friday and Saturday, and then I will upload it on Sunday and then make it public on Monday. And then starting from Monday, if I have any ideas or plans for what I want to do for that week's episode, I will kind of, start writing stuff down, or maybe if something happens that week that maybe sparks an idea. I know I talk a lot about fast food and movies, so maybe if I have a bad experience or a good experience with a fast food restaurant, maybe I think, okay, maybe this could be a segment on this week's episode. I could talk about the Wendy's dilemma, which, if you haven't listened to the Wendy's dilemma, feel free to head over to episode 1. That is crazy. I know I've only been doing this for 8 or 9 weeks, but it feels like forever. Anyways, you can feel free to head over to my website, which is morningbythecoastblog.wordpress.com. Once again, that is morningbythecoastblog.wordpress.com. You can email me any questions, comments, feedbacks, or anything at all. My email is mbtcpodcast.info@gmail.com. Once again, that is mbtcpodcast.info@gmail.com. You can literally email me any. You can email. I'm messing up this outro. You can email me literally anything at all, and I'll be sure to include it in that week's episode. Anyways, with that being said, you're listening to Morning by the Coast, and I will see you again soon.